Greetings and welcome to the Homeless Consultant channel. My name is Paul B. I am the Homeless Consultant. And today I just want to tell you about what I can only call my first near-death experience of the winter. And it's pretty scary. To begin with, let me go back 2 nights ago. 2 nights ago I was at my usual spot with the internet access, the restaurant that I talked about in a previous video, and I was uploading the video called Snowplows and Drug Deals. And that of course included film of a drug deal going down on one side of a gas station while there was a police officer on the other side who didn't even know that it was happening. When I was there, I had to wait until the snowplows were done with their lot, and as soon as the plows were done, I pulled in to do my thing. Well, I start uploading it and then start looking for some, visuals and graphics for another upcoming video, and it wasn't very long, and I'm suddenly surrounded by police cars, shining their flashlights and having me roll down my window, looking at my ID. And I had heard some noise in the background, but I thought it was like a car stereo, or the snowplows had some radio or something going. It sounded like, some kind of utility radio. And the officer says, "Well, didn't you hear that alarm?" And I was like, "What?" And I just never really did hear it. I couldn't hear what it was actually saying, but apparently it was an alarm for this restaurant. And the officer said this alarm goes off all the time. We get called out here all the time. And I thought, well, I've never seen it go off. I'm here at night quite often. Not all night, but, to do my thing. And I'm thinking, I certainly didn't set off the alarm. I pulled in, and if anything, it was the plows. The plows were up right next to the building. They're banging things around, boom, boom, just pushing snow. I didn't even go near the building to park where I park. And anyhow, the point is, the officer told me to move along. He asked where I normally sleep, and I said over at this grocery store across the street. And he said, "Well, move along over there." And I didn't want to stop him because he was on the job. They had an alarm they had to look into. But I said, "Well, do you mind if I stay here? I've talked to the manager. I have permission. I'm doing something." And he's like, "Well, just move along, unless you want to, have police looking at your ID all the time." And again, this officer was about half my age, maybe a little bit more, and that alone is pretty heartbreaking. When you're brought up to respect your elders, that's he wasn't going to listen to anything I had to say. Let me put it that way. So I went over to the grocery store, and I wasn't able to upload that video. In fact, I had to leave myself logged in over there. I had to just pack up and leave, just abort everything. So the next day I went to the library to upload it, and I got it done, but it took a long, long, long time because the library internet access is horrific, as I have mentioned in another video. So then, that was yesterday. That was the night after what happened with the alarm going off at the restaurant. The following day in the morning, I went out to check my email, and this was important to me because I was, I don't know about expecting, but certainly hoping in this case I would have an email or two regarding things I'm trying to sell. I only have a few things left. It's not going to keep me long, but I'll put in another video what's going on there, but basically I'm just having things stolen from me. I'm in such a desperate situation. When I go to sell them, they're just being stolen. And something that I paid, $120, $150 for, by how much money I get for it and how much gas I have to put in this car to keep it running in the cold. Something I paid $150 for can buy me, say, 2 days of gasoline, and that's it, nothing else. So I was really wanting to see if these people wanted to buy a couple things at normal used prices. That could keep me for a week or two. So I went there to the library at 5 because they open, they're adjacent to a government building that's open, I don't know, 8. And so I got there at 5. It took about 15 or 20 minutes to really get even logged in because the the connection is so bad, you have to just keep connecting and being disconnected over and over and over again. You just have to do it over and over. You have to reboot the computer until finally you get a connection. And I'm sitting in a parking spot as close to the building, as close to where I figure the router probably is as I can get. So I finally get it running, and within minutes I picked up some kind of virus or hijacker. It hijacked my browsers and, put all those windows up saying, your computer's been compromised, we're going to shut it down, and, it's just a bunch of baloney. They can't do that, and they're pretending that they're Microsoft. So I'm on this lousy connection at the library. Normally, I can fix those things. They're not quick. They take an hour or two. But on that connection at the library, and without my tools like my home computer had and everything, all I have is a tablet and this piece of junk laptop. So I started working on that. I'd say around 5:30, I probably had to start looking into the virus thing, trying to get that to work. Every time I'd reboot, those windows would pop all up again. Anyway, the point is, I ran the engine the whole time, but I didn't have anything plugged in to charge. So it was just the heater was the only draw on the battery. So from 5 a.m., and I worked on trying to fix this virus until about noon. The thing is, at 11 a.m., which is 6 hours after I started, so the car was running for 6 hours, I turned off the engine because I just suddenly realized, oh geez, it's roasty toasty in here. I've got to conserve gas. I mean, I'm burning $10 in gas right there. So at 11 a.m. I shut it down. At noon, while I'm still trying to fix this virus thing, and frankly getting absolutely nowhere. I wasn't any further than I started. 1 hour later, I try to start the car and the battery's dead already. Now the temperature, let me see, the temperature at that time was 1 degree with a wind chill of -12. The previous night it had been -9 degrees with a wind chill of -18. But again, I had my car running 6 hours. I left it off for 1 hour and the battery was just dead. Just so at that point, I can't do anything. I can't move. I'm parked. I've got cars coming in and out all the time for the library in this government building. I'm close to the building, so there's people walking all around me, and again, they look, they see all this junk in here, they see the condition I'm in, and it creeps them out, and they look at me funny, and it's just so humiliating. But I couldn't do anything. Now you have to understand, this car is everything to me, and if the battery doesn't start, I can't do anything. So I got out and tried to get people to help, but of course nobody helps in Minnesota. They only talk about how much they help on television. So I got the same thing I always get, which is people, oh, I have to get going. I have to go. Sorry, I have to go to. No, I can't. And at this particular place, I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm homeless. I can say the truth. But this place is pretty heavy on the Somali side. A lot of Somalis here. I have never once ever had a Somali help me with anything that I've asked for help with. Ever. And they are pretty rude about it too. They make it very clear, you're not one of us, we're not touching you. And this has nothing to do with me being homeless. You figure it out. But this is the place I was. This is where I'm stuck going, is to this library. It's all around this government housing. The government's paying for these people to live there while I live in a car. None of them would help me. Just jump my car, or better yet, pop the clutch. And the thing was, I know from experience with the battery, when the battery goes dead, trying to jump it puts a huge, current drain because the battery is dead. It puts a big current drain on the other car. And most people don't seem to understand how to jump a car. You have to charge the battery a bit. You don't just try to start it up right away. And if I don't do that, then they get upset, think I'm taking too long. Well, that's what you're supposed to do. And so I tried to pop the clutch, and I had parked in that spot, but that spot had an incline. Now, when there's no snow on the ground, if there's no cars around, I could actually push it enough to pop the clutch myself. With the snow, that's not the case, because the snow slows down your car. And the thing was, there were cars parked there all the time. That place is just hopping all day long. So I was asking for people, not so much for a jump, because it was actually kind of hard to access it unless the car next to me would leave. But just give me a little push, not even a lot. We're on a hill, and I'll push from here, and then I'll jump in and pop the clutch. But there's only about 30 or 40 feet to other cars I could smack into them. So I mean, it has to be done right. Nobody would help. That's my point. Nobody would help. Nobody would help, and I want to emphasize this point. I'm going to say it again. Nobody would help. And I've dealt with this all the time here. I could turn on this radio right now on MPR, Minnesota Public Radio, and there'll probably be a story about how generous and charitable Minnesota is. These people will not help. So, I had no choice. I mean, I was freezing. I'm wearing sandals and socks. I really don't have any gloves. I actually did find some later when I was digging around. These big, huge things. You can't maneuver anything with them. But, I just got in the car. I mean, the battery's dead, right? So I can't move the seat. I can't lay the seat back. I can't do anything. So I just pull up all the covers and I put them over my head, and I'm just trying to sleep. And I fell asleep. I was exhausted. I mean, I hadn't been able to sleep because I'd been chased around by plows the last several days since this weather started. And I fell asleep. I don't know for how long, probably less than an hour. The cold equalized very, very quickly. I mean, I can feel right now, I can feel the wind blowing through here. The cold wind. And at that point, it was, what, minus 12 wind chill? The point is, after about 4 hours of this, I couldn't take it anymore. I was just dying. I was freezing. My toes were hard. I couldn't feel them. They were hard. You gotta understand what that's like. My windows were so frosted up, like that stuff you spray at Christmas time on glass. I mean, the whole inside was just completely frozen. So I got up. I tried to listen to a. I was gonna listen to a video, audio on a video, which is what I do with the computer. The computer, of course, had run down because I hadn't been charging it all morning. So that's one reason at noon I kind of stopped and thought about trying to start the car. But I have a tablet here, and I pick up, I don't know where it went, but I pick up the tablet, and it's not the best protective case in the world. This thing was so cold, it was just like putting your hand on a piece of ice. And I turn it on, and it's broken. The whole LCD's just cracked internally from the cold. So this thing's just completely destroyed, just gone, just from the cold. I didn't drop it. I didn't do anything with it. It worked fine before, and the cold just killed it. So there goes one of my few tools that I had left. So I got out. I don't know when, 4:30, something like that. And I have to humiliate myself trying to get people to help me again. And I got the exact same response. I gotta go. Sorry. They always say sorry. So I went in to the librarian. Librarian was a huge woman. Looked like she ate the buffalo by herself, and she was not friendly at all. I said, do you happen to have a sturdy young man working here who can help me? I just need to push the car a bit to pop the clutch. It's already on a bit of an incline. It shouldn't be any problem. And she just said, no. And that's how she said it. Minnesota government employee. Typical of Minnesota government employees. So I went back to my car, but my feet were so frozen at that time. It was, if you haven't been there, you don't know what I'm talking about. You can tell I'm going to lose my toes or my feet. They're that cold, and I have nowhere to go except sitting in a car that I can't generate any heat in. There's nothing I can do. Now, I found some, along with this, I haven't pulled these out yet, I haven't needed them yet, little kind of boots, sort of kind of boots. They're more like dress boots, I think. And I put those on, but it was too late. My socks were wet, my feet were frozen solid. I couldn't, Again, if you haven't been there, you don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, I was so cold, I couldn't even feel my face. I couldn't feel the skin on my face. I couldn't feel my toes. So I went back into the library again, and this time I was a little more aggressive with that woman. And I said, look, I need somebody to help me push that car out there. All right, I'm freezing in there. I live in that car. I need someone to help me. I've been at this for hours and nobody will help me. So she does the, oh my gosh, I actually have to do something for my paycheck. And she calls up and calls this guy out and asks him, and he was also, who knows where he was from. I would estimate somewhere in Africa, and he didn't really want to help, but he felt kind of compelled to for some reason. He kind of tried to get out of it, and I was just adamant, I've got to have this. I'm not asking for some other reason. They don't get it. What am I supposed to say to them? I'm going to freeze to death out there, which is the truth. I didn't say that, but that's exactly what it was. What am I supposed to say when these people won't just help? All he had to do was put on a coat and gloves and walk some feet outside the door where he works. Push the car, walk back in before he's even cooled off. So finally I get the guy to come out and help. Now by this time some cars had left. There was a little more clearance back there, but not a lot. There were still enough cars. The thing was, he couldn't really speak English. He didn't grasp the concept of what it means to pop a clutch, and I told him, I explained it to him, but he's just, yeah. Get in car, yeah. That's what he kept saying, and I'm trying to tell him, no, I can't get in the car. We both need to push it. I jump in the car and pop the clutch. Anyway, the point is, we push it, and we get it up to about the speed it would need to be to pop the clutch, and I jump in the car, and then he lets go, and the car almost immediately slows down to nothing because all the snow on the ground. And I try popping the clutch, and it just goes like that and stops. So now I'm out blocking the intersection, and I hardly have any hill behind me. So I go over and I talk to the guy, and I try to explain to him, you have to have speed and maintain the speed and the momentum. When I pop the clutch, it's the motion of the car that gets my engine spinning, and then the electrical system kicks in. I have to have that speed. Yeah, get in car. It's cold, get in car. I gotta get inside. See, we try it again with the little bit of hill I have left, which isn't much, because we just wasted it. And he does exactly the same thing. He basically slows my car down as soon as I jump in here. This time it just dies, and it's out in the middle of the parking lot. Just sideways, just the way the parking lot's set up with all these weird islands. So my car's just completely dead, absolutely dead. I can't even work the locks, can't do anything. And he says, I gotta go inside, I gotta go to work. This is my job, I gotta go to work. And it's like, yeah, he's right, it is. But he didn't want to help, so he goes inside. What he did was he moved my car out into the middle, blocking the traffic on a hill the wrong way. I'm frozen solid. The only thing I can do is get in that very car, which is the same temperature as outdoors. No difference. No way to generate heat. That's the time, I think, when I found these finally, which didn't help at all. It didn't mean anything at that point. My hands were frozen. So I'm out there trying to push the car uphill on icy parking lot by myself. And I'm giving it all I've got, but you know what? I'm already malnourished. I am not in good shape from sitting in this car for the last 2 months. Haven't had a shower in the last 2 months. No food, bread and water. Here's, you know what water, bread. That's what I live on. So I'm there pushing this car by myself uphill, and all I can do is try to rock it. And I'm hoping that it doesn't go my direction on the hill, because I would have to just let it go, and it would just probably go smashing into some other car. Meanwhile, the whole time I'm doing this, and it was about 15 or 20 minutes, I would say, and I was so cold. I was, this is not something I want to do. I I can't afford it. I was getting ready to go in the library and have them call an ambulance. That's how bad it was. I was going to die. People are not understanding what I'm going through out here. I was going to lose my toes. People are not getting this. They're just not grasping this. They don't care. For like 15 or 20 minutes, I'm there pushing that car, rocking it, and I'm just getting weaker by the minute. I mean, I have nothing to eat. The whole time I'm stranded in this car all day in this cold. Nothing to, I mean, a couple of these. And I'm pushing it, rocking it. The whole time I do that, there's a steady stream of cars coming in, and they just look at me and glare at me. Not one of them stops and asks for if I need help. Not one of them walks over to me and asks if I need help. Not one of them. Not one of them. And I don't even know how to estimate the number of cars. Because of that government building, which was still open, 30 cars maybe? 30? Basically, one, another, a little slower than that. Every 10, 20 seconds, another car pulling into the lot. It's very, very busy place. That's why I couldn't try to pop the clutch myself. Because there's so many cars going around there, I would either smash into a parked car or a moving car if I tried it myself. Nobody would help. And I kind of fell down on the hood, and I was just, to be honest, I was crying. I was just like, these people just don't care if I live or die. I've had 2 years of this. Anytime I ask for help, nobody helps. They just try to refer me to a government agency without ever comprehending that those agencies don't do anything. They take your name and your number, they put you in computers, which is going to make it a nightmare for you to get anything done in your future once you get your name associated with homelessness in all their computers. But they don't do anything for you, especially if you're a white male. If I was one of those Somalis, guess what? I'd have a nice place. Well, they have a nice place to live. Where do you think it came from? So I fell down the hood. I was actually crying. And I don't know what it was about me dying, because that's a blessing at this point. I think it was just that there's no goodness left in people at all anymore. There's nothing. There's no goodness left. And I can't count the number of people I was around who saw this thing throughout the entire day. Hundreds. And about 30 cars or more coming in while I'm trying to do this. As I'm on my last leg there, a car pulls up. And this young man, maybe 22 years old or something, just rolls down his window and says, "You need some help?" And him and his girlfriend, we pushed my car uphill, and then we pushed it down, and I tried popping the clutch, and absolutely nothing happened. And we were at speed. We pushed it up the hill again, and we pushed it even faster. I tried popping the clutch, nothing happened. It's just dead. The whole car's just dead. And he said when he first came in, he said, I can't stay long. I'm on my way somewhere, but and I told him, after the second time we tried popping the clutch, I told him, man, I don't know what to do. I said, I live in this car, which I don't like telling people, but I was like, I live in this car. And he said, well, he had to get going, but he said, let's try jumping it. So he gets out some cables, and we try to jump it. Now again, the reason I like to pop the clutch is because the momentum from the car forces the engine when it's cold to move, and then you can kick in the electrical system. When you're using a battery, with a battery that's as bad as mine, because for 2 years I've had to leave this car running all winters, which is 4 to 6 months each year. The battery's all but dead. I mean, and it was a new battery when I started. I'd gotten a new battery and alternator right before I became homeless. In fact, the day I paid for them the day before I went into work and found out I was laid off. That's one reason I didn't have a lot of money in my pocket that day. So I didn't want to jump it if I could help it. For one thing, it's easier to pop the clutch. You just give it a push and it's running, you know, as opposed to jumping where you have to hook up all those cables and everything. But the other thing is that by charging the battery, if the battery's not in good shape, it's not necessarily going to happen anyway. Whereas when you have this mechanical, you know, the kinetic energy of the car moving, it forces, if the engine hasn't frozen solid. And don't forget, I'm out of antifreeze. I mean, I've got my, do I have check engine lights on, the antifreeze lights on? I mean, I'm out of fluids in this thing, so it could have just been completely frozen. But this guy said, well, we'll try jumping it, even though he had to go somewhere. So we tried jumping it, and I let it, you know, go for a little bit. And I came in, I turned the key, and just absolutely nothing happens. As if I hadn't turned the key. Only thing I hear is this. And I just thought, this is great. I've actually got someone who's willing to help, and now it's too late. Because by this time it was about 6 p.m. My problem began 6 hours earlier at noon, when the car was still, the battery might have had problems, but again, I'd been running it for 6 hours and it only sat for an hour, so I mean, it still had some hope of getting going if anyone had bothered to help me back then, which they didn't. So, and the guy says, well, let's try it again. Can you believe that? I mean, that's somebody who's willing to help. So we tried again, but this time we let it charge longer. And I was scared to try it at all, because this is really my last shake at it. And I come in and I'm just, I'd rather run for an hour. I don't want to destroy his battery before I try it. And I turn the key and nothing happens again. And he says, try it again. It's like, whatever. At this point, I try it and it starts right up. Just starts up. All the lights come on. You know, I mean, it was cold. I wasn't going to get any heat out of it. I walk over to the guy. He's pulling off the cables, putting them away, and I just grabbed him and hugged him. And I said, man, you don't know what you just did. Because this young man saved my life. Well, all these people, all these Minnesotans, Minnesota friendly, kindest, most generous, most charitable state in the country, all of them, all day long, just driving around. That police officer who tells me to leave a place where I have permission to be, to go to a place where I don't have permission to be, because even though he's half my age, he can't take the time to learn what my situation is and get some facts before he gives me orders. Those are the kinds of people I had helping me before. This guy saved my life, as far as I'm concerned. That one young man and his girlfriend did more for me than hundreds of combined Minnesotans did throughout the rest of the day. And the only, you know, I give credit to this guy from the library for at least coming out and trying. He didn't want to. You could tell he didn't want to. And I don't know why he kept slowing my car down. He had to know I was trying to get, I don't understand it, but I guess relative to other people, I'm grateful that he attempted to help to the extent that he did. Unless he was trying to sabotage me because he was mad that I kind of in front of his bosses compelled him to come outside. And then he runs away and just leaves me stranded in a worse situation. Anyway, I couldn't see out of the windows, so I started scraping the windows, rubbing them. There's no heat at all, nothing. The check engine light is blinking. I've never had it blink before. And I'm just smelling something horrible, and I'm thinking this thing's going to catch fire. I don't think I have any fluids in here. I don't know if I have oil. I certainly don't have antifreeze. I mean a little bit, but so I ran it and I'm scraping everything off, but my feet, again, it was my feet in particular and my face, because I couldn't feel anything. I was like doing this and I couldn't even feel it. I couldn't tell. I could feel the pressure, but no pain. And it was because of my feet mainly. I just had to go for it. I scraped off what I could and I started driving really slowly, and I drove back to the place where I usually am, at the grocery store with the gas station, where at least the people at the gas station know me. But I didn't want to shut off the car and go inside of the gas station, because what if it doesn't start again? So I sat there for 1.5 hours outside the gas station, terrified. Again, I don't have an emergency brake, so I can't leave it running. I have a spare key hanging from me now. If you look at the other video where I lock my keys in the car, I have a key to get me into the door. The problem is I can't leave the car running because I have to leave it in neutral, and it'll roll away. Everything around here is on some kind of an incline. So without an emergency brake, I couldn't just lock the car, leave it running, and go inside and get something. Those guys would have given me a cup of coffee under this circumstance, something to warm me up. So I had to sit in there for an hour and a half. It was maybe an hour and 15 minutes before I finally felt heat coming out of this. And I was watching the temperature gauge. It was just sitting down there by C the whole time, cold. And then it started moving, and it took maybe 15 minutes when it started moving to finally get up to the middle between hot and cold, which is what normal. And I felt heat. My feet, I was there rubbing them. I took all the blankets I had, I'm holding them in there, and I was just praying that this would work. When the heat kicked in, 15 minutes or so, I'm putting my feet up under the vent on the bottom with the heat. And I don't know how long it was. It must have been about 15 minutes, I guess. You know, somewhere in there, 15, 20. And at some point, I just felt like this peace come over my feet, and I could feel them again. I could move my toes and I could actually feel them again. I could feel the moisture from the sweat in there. Or not the sweat, but the snow on the socks and everything. Now, my left foot, the toe next to the little toe, all through my foot, there's a whole region there I can't feel even now. My feet are back to normal. Praise God for that. I haven't looked at them yet. I'm scared to look at them. I might have black feet right now for all I know, but I can't feel anything on that side of my left foot. Nothing. I can't feel the toes. I can't feel the sole, the bottom. There's just like a whole strip of the foot that's I can't feel anything. But my feet smell like death already because I haven't had a shower in 2 months. That's one reason I can't go in public. I mean, they smell like they're decaying. They did before this. I can only imagine how they are now. So I had to sit there again for an hour, and it was about an hour and a half when I finally got things where heat was coming out. When that thing finally went up to the midpoint, I let it run a bit longer, and then I felt like I was finally safe. But I still backed up, actually where I am right now, which is an incline, not a huge one, but it's an incline, enough of one if I had to pop the clutch again. And then I could go in, and yes, they gave me a cup of coffee. Now the thing is, that was about 7:30 at night. I went out to check my email at 5 in the morning. It's 14 and a half hours, throughout which I did nothing but really suffer, either because I'm trying to fix a virus on my computer, or because one of the very few tools I have left died, or because I was freezing and shivering and losing all my body heat, and I've got just people spinning around me all day long, people in, just a constant steady flow of people, and not one of them would help me, until I finally had to get on the library's case and compel them to get someone who still didn't want to help me to come out and hurt me. They didn't even help. They made matters worse. And then he abandoned me. I don't know how to say enough good things about this young man and his girlfriend who saw someone. He wasn't even coming into this place. He was going down the road and he saw me on this hill trying to push this thing. God bless that man and his girlfriend. I mean, why can't everybody be like that? I mean, it's pretty instinctive. It's always been instinctive for me. If I see someone in need like that, I always stop. I hope I never experienced this until I moved to Minnesota, and I'm hoping that in the last 10 years the rest of the country hasn't turned this way. But I'll tell you something, I'm not getting any help from all these videos I'm making either. I'm not getting any responses, I'm not getting any views. I'm making a video right now talking to you knowing that it's probably going to have 0 views other than the ones that I watch. And this was meant to get me enough collective support to save me from this. So look at what happened. If that officer had not told me to move along, as near as he wasn't mean about it or anything, he was professional about it. I'm not saying that, but he wasn't respectful in the sense that don't assume because I'm homeless that I'm an idiot. There's a reason I'm here, and believe it or not, I actually talked to the manager and made sure it was okay. So don't give me orders when you don't know what's going on, but he did it anyway. If he hadn't done that, then I wouldn't be stuck at that library where I'm getting viruses because that government computer system is a piece of garbage. Things wouldn't take me 10 times as long. So that police officer started this ball rolling 2 days earlier. And this is a very good police department. This is an officer who didn't know me. First time I'd seen this one. That's what a difference an officer who has some kind of empathy and understanding can make. And again, he was not mean. He was not rude. He was professional. He was friendly, I would say. I don't think he was trying to hurt me or anything. The problem is, when he learned I lived in this car, he seemed to have made an assumption, and the assumption is that, well, he's homeless, so he must not know what he's doing, he must not be competent. I'm going to have to lead and guide this man who's twice my age. Rather than showing respect to my elders, I'm going to have to tell this guy what he needs to do because he can't figure it out for himself. If the guy had left me alone, guess what? Instead of almost freezing to death yesterday, I would have been perfectly fine. I would not... Why even cover it all? You just heard the story. That officer started the ball rolling, and then countless dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of Minnesotans who did absolutely nothing for me later made it worse. The last thing I want to say is that when I had a home and I had my equipment, my home computer, which is a powerhouse, my degree's in computer science, fixing a virus or malware, those kinds of things, I know how to do it, and I know how to do it right in most cases. But I take my time because I vet every instruction I get before I take that instruction. There's too many bad guys out there who create these problems and then they go create a fake solution online. So when you go to seek the solution, you find their solution, which makes it worse. So you have to vet every place that tells you here's how to fix this virus. You have to go vet them, make sure that they're legitimate, and every link they give you in there, you have to make sure that it's taking you to a legitimate place before you actually do it. But still, when I was at home, even with the worst viruses, I could usually have them fixed in an hour or two. There were a couple that frustrated me maybe for a day, but for the most part, something like this, easy, would have been done in an hour or two, tops. Instead, what do I have? 14 and a half hours I'm stuck at that place, and you know what? It still has the virus. I can't do anything about it. What am I going to do? Go back to that ridiculous government computer system at the library? So as I upload this video, you know what I'm doing? I'm taking a risk of all my passwords and personal information being sucked out by this virus. That's the risk I have to take. If I'd been allowed to stay at that restaurant where I had permission, if that officer had allowed that, I wouldn't have had this problem. They had a good, secure, very secure, reliable system that didn't disconnect all the time like this thing at the library does. So I can't even track what I'm doing and try to trace anything. So I guess that's the story. And I go through all this effort to create this video knowing that my videos have almost no views that are not my own. My next video is going to talk about how I'm going to have to stop making these videos, because what I just described to you, how I spent my Tuesday yesterday, is about to become how I spend every day until I just die. And if you go back to video number 1, the very first one, How not to do business, subtitled Homelessness. I say in there, the state of Minnesota addresses the homeless issue by sticking their heads in the sand. Their strategy, by their actions, not by their words, but by what they actually do, or don't do in this case, is to exterminate the homeless off camera. They do it either by neglect or intimidation, so that they move away to another jurisdiction and they become someone else's problem. Excuse me. Or they just wait until they die. And when people like me die, the medical examiner takes our bodies, figures out we have no family, they cremate us, and they bury us in a mass grave as respectfully as they can. For 2 years I've been asking for help and I get no help. For 2 months I've been making these videos asking for help and I've gotten no help. Please help.